Welcome to the latest episode of Lockdown with Kayla and Taylor. With cybersecurity encompassing so many facets of business risk and life, it can be overwhelming and stressful. With our help, you'll be able to make sense of it all. This week, we are discussing a really fun topic. I know that at least it often comes up in my house because we are TV and movie junkies here. Cybersecurity. So, these portrayals can significantly differ from real world practices, creating a mix of accurate representations and overly exaggerated or unrealistic scenarios. So, Taylor, I know you and I have discussed this a few times. And from what you've seen, how does cybersecurity in real life compare to what's depicted in the media?
It ooh, it widely varies, right? There's several different media outlets and media types that portray cybersecurity differently. And like the different aspects of security, red teaming, blue teaming, purple teaming, nation state actors even. It's all over the place. You've got books, you've got TV shows, you've got movies, you've got all of these great media representations that sometimes at the base value of what you start to look at, the practices are sometimes legitimate. The execution is often not accurate or it's over dramatized.
Yeah, just I don't know, maybe 2 weeks ago, we introduced our seven-year-old to Jurassic Park, and the dinosaurs, yes, she loved it, especially since, like, right before that, we showed her Avatar, and she was very confused, but anyway, the scenes when they're trying to hack in and get the lights turned on and how quick it is, and she was like, "Mom, is that what you do? Is it?" I was like, No, it's not." And uh, how old is the 14-year-old girl would not have been able to get into the systems as quickly as she did and doing all this. Yeah, it's just, it
But
does.
but the way that she traversed the file system, granted, I don't think that the Unix flavor that she was using would have had a graphical interface in
3,
1993, I
3.
believe, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, 1993. Fun fact, all the Jurassic Park movies always come out within a week of my birthday.
Oh, that is a fun
Every
fact.
single one of them. They're always a June release.
It's just because 'cause you're special.
Summertime blockbuster.
Yeah. I think in the media often portrays hackers breaking into secured systems within seconds and flashy interfaces, with the exception of Jurassic Park, because it was 1993, and the rapid typing that I can type really fast, but not that fast. Where in the reality, it involves meticulous planning, reconnaissance, which is one of my favorite words because I can never spell it right, and then exploiting vulnerabilities, which we know now can take days, weeks, months, and it is like a
Yeah.
full on effort. And it's not as easy as some of these movies depict it to be at all.
100%. And I think, like, one of the biggest, like, dramatizations whenever you start thinking about things like that is whenever you start thinking about, like, the CSIs and the NCISs and other TV shows like that, where it's like, "Oh, I'm gonna start pinpointing this phone, or I'm gonna break into this laptop. All I need is the IP," and it's 1, that computer's on a private IP and a home network, so you actually need, like, the home IP address, and then you have to find a way to get into the home network, which is usually like a brute force attack or looking for a back door. And again, like that goes to reconnaissance. It's not like this 30-second thing, but then also, if you inversely think about it, opening the door to attackers is that easy.
Yeah, it's true.
You hear, I guess they finally arrested him, but everyone's favorite prince from Africa that was offering all of that money, all you had to do was wire that $2,000 and you'd become a millionaire. Um, but opening the door to attacks is extremely easy. It
Yeah.
could be as easy as opening up a team viewer or some type of RDP session
Yeah.
where you're giving them direct access. And so that's where there's a balance of like reality and dramatization. So as experts, and I even do this with action movies with my background where I'm like, ah, he would have ran out of ammunition by now. The guy has a
Yeah.
pistol with unlimited ammo, and you're like, "Mm."
That's movies and TV, right? It's all about the dramatization. My favorite that I've seen recently, actually a lot more on Twitter, I can't call it X, I'm sorry, has been the hackers with the hoodies. Yeah, I'm sorry. It is 70 degrees right now, and I am not wearing a hoodie. But yes, exactly like that. In a dark room, they're being portrayed as these lone geniuses, that lone wolf with a supernatural ability to manipulate any system put in front of them without knowing anything about it at all in a very short window of time. What are your thoughts on that portrayal?
So there are people that are extremely adept in deceptive or deception
Yeah.
technologies that fit that persona. 100%. I think that the more that things get circulated around social media, one of the biggest like groups, activists, however you want to classify them,
Yeah.
that really started to reinstill that persona of being in a dark room with a large monitor, with a hoodie up, looking down at a bright screen was anonymous. They played into that
Yeah.
perfectly,
That's true.
and they were able to garner so much attention with the way that they exploited systems, the way that they meticulously chose their targets and their exploits. So that with the shock and awe culture that we're in, I think that it has rapidly grown. But as systems have has as systems have advanced and as security has advanced, I think that there's a lot less of the lone wolf type of hacker or
Mhm.
threat actor than there used to be. But I do think if you look historically, the reference came from somewhere and it obviously exists for a reason. And I love it. I love the idea because it just shows the evolution of the mindset that someone in a dark room by themselves was able to stare at a screen long enough to decipher all of the ones and zeros to exploit something and garner that kind of attention.
Yeah, and no, I think that now, however, with the complexity of the systems, that trope, if you will, is very it's very niche to the market
Very
of like hackers. Now it's
cyber
cybersecurity.
cafes.
Yeah, cyber cafes, teams of experts with diverse skill sets, including network security, the ethical hacking side, incident
Mhm.
response, forensics, like this is like the good guy side. And it's more of a team. Cybersecurity is more of a team sport. And that even goes to the other side. Now you have, as you mentioned before, nation states, where that, in my mind, is almost what you'd see portrayed in the movies about like sweatshops, where
Yes.
it's like a warehouse and just rows and rows of people with devices. That's my I don't know, of course, but that is what I think of when I start to think of nation states. I just think of rows of desks of people day in and day out trying to overwhelm systems and find and exploit vulnerabilities. So I think the reality is has shifted a bit into this team sport approach to both ethical hacking and then also the hacking, the hacktivists, the disruptors. So I think
Yeah.
it's changed, it's evolved as things do. Are there still people, one man person teams, excuse me, that can do? Absolutely, but it's not that way necessarily anymore. All of the place.
Yeah. You hear the term like script kiddies,
Yep.
robots, bots.
Yeah.
I even heard Ash Kittens in one of the threat intelligence podcasts the other day, and
That's a new one for me. All right.
I was like, "That's weird." But when you start talking about rows and rows of people attacking and trying to circumvent systems, I go immediately to the Matrix where it shows all of the rows of Agent Smith. I'm
Uh,
like, that's what we have. We have people
yeah.
repeating the same processes at scale against large scale initiatives or enterprises or countries, even against cyber warfare units within different military installations. They're 100%. And I do think that some of that's glorified or implied. And also, when you look at written word too, they're always like these large scale efforts and attacks that are being
Yeah.
taken out. And depending on what type of genre you read, it could be a single person at the end of the day that almost like, oh, the Wizard of Oz, right? Oz was this big person, this big personality, and then you pull the curtain back and you're like, wow, this guy's
Feeble
poor.
old man.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I think speaking of these teams that are sitting in rows of desks, rows of hackers, often fictional depictions will use hackers, will showcase hackers using like generic tools or custom built software with all these dramatic visuals. And you got to give it to the graphic designers and the media specialists there, like that do that. That's amazing. But the reality is a bit different. So, can we talk a little bit about that side of reality?
Yeah, there's only so many times that I can watch a show and watch someone cat a file and be like, "I'm in." And I'm like, "No, like
You're
you
not.
listed the contents of a file. Good job. You read that file." Yeah, I think one of my favorites again is like Back to the Matrix where you see like the green screen with the falling letters and
Yeah.
it's almost like
That's
they
actually become very iconic, hasn't it?
it has.
I've seen that as like phone cases, backgrounds on laptops and other like devices and stuff. That is a very iconic visual.
It is, and it like people have also turned it into like cipher contests, like
Mhm.
identifying characters within each row to formulate the password. I've actually even seen like that type of like green screen type of hacking implied even in video games. So Fallout, replaying that because the show came out, and like earlier, I would never think about it. I'm like, oh, I'm just searching for a password. And they actually built in like logic into the video game where you have so many password attempts before it locks you out of the system. It's okay, that makes sense. Like you are going to get locked out. I love that. But like the way that you're able to manipulate the passwords using special characters to not use one of your attempts, but to get like a likeness back. Am I on the right track of the password? Like it gives you that sense of, oh, this is exactly what it's like. I'm going to get a
Yeah.
prompt of all of these letters and symbols and numbers and now I have to decipher it. And it's not like that. Like it's really, there are some systems that are probably like that, but it's not like that. It's, hey, who am I profiling? What's the user? What's the user type?
Mhm.
Do I have the ability to do open source intelligence reconnaissance on this person to understand like their digital footprint? What are their likes? What are
Right.
their dislikes? What's their wedding anniversary if I can find that? I've gone as far
Yeah.
in like OSINTing for large organizations where I built out like an entire social media footprint off of somebody's GitHub username. And
That's
it's things like that like lead to some of these dramatizations, right? Oh, I can guess this person's password. Another one that like literally just triggered to me is Criminal Minds. The way that there's an episode where Dr. Reed is in, I believe it's a teenager's room, him and Shamar Moore's character, Agent Morgan, and they're like trying to get into this laptop and they're like looking around the room for clues.
yeah.
So that is actually a legitimate reconnaissance association of understanding the person and the persona of the
Yeah.
user using the device.
Sorry, you cannot mention Criminal Minds without Penelope. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
I'm
Like
gonna get to Penelope.
that's blasphemous if you don't mention that genius of a character, which is very well written. And I think
Her character arc is beautiful.
I think she characterizes what we're discussing now because
Yeah.
she does sit alone in her room and working on her many screens and types really fast. She's brilliant, but she's also very social. So they have the reality and the media portrayal done very well with her. And she's
Mhm.
not just creating, obviously, yes, custom scripts are definitely a thing, but she's also using things like Nmap and Wireshark and Metasploit, and she's really getting in there. And I think her portrayal of the character of I can't remember the actress's name, and I apologize because I do love that show. It is almost spot on, and they do show the mundane and the spectacular because
Yeah.
it can be pretty mundane doing those things. But
Yeah, 'cause she's talking about looking through databases and doing joins of like
yes,
physical characteristics and geolocation. And again,
And it's not done very quickly all the time. Sometimes I'll have to get back to you, this is gonna take a bit, and it's not like ask and you receive, like some of the other shows that are very guilty of that, like the CSIs that are like, "Oh, we've got this, we got this, the warrant to do this, go," and they're like, "Done."
done.
Like, "No, you're not."
But
Um,
the other, like, the counterpoint to that, though, is it does show how quickly, and I'm gonna bring up our favorite word, how quickly you're able to pivot
yeah,
based on very explicit information.
yeah,
Because if you think about it, like, we'll just use looking for a white male in his 30s that works in IT within the state of North Carolina, that's gonna take a minute. But then as like they develop and they continue to profile, it's like looking for a white male in his mid 30s that works in IT. He probably drives an SUV. He's a family man.
yeah,
He's active and fit because he's able to manipulate these crime scenes. He has a higher level of education, so he's probably had at least some college or some technical degree. And he also has the ability to stay off the grid. It's okay.
yeah, goes from a wide down to a very specific
Yeah.
person.
And
Absolutely. Yeah.
and as you get more explicit, just like in security, right? And this is like one of my favorite things when you talk to a lot of people are like, "Oh yeah, we saw this IOC one time, random connection to this foreign country. We're gonna block the entire country." And it's odd, but okay. And then 2 weeks later, someone from marketing or another department's like, "Hey, this order system's down. Do we know
Yeah.
why?" "Oh, it's hosted over here." And they're like, "Interesting." So now you gotta go back and reverse this very broad approach that you took to secure because you thought that was the right approach whenever you should have been very specific in certain instances.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, and that's where having a team of experts of very diverse backgrounds is now the preferred method because someone else could have said, "Well, wait a second," incident response person could have said, "Wait, instead of just blocking this outright, let's walk it back. Let's follow the facts and trace where they've gone laterally and look at and probe where they've come from." Absolutely agree with you on that. So let's talk about the year 1995 for a sec. Let's go
Year 9
in the way back machine, which to me only like in my head is only about 10 years ago. I for some reason I can't actually believe that it's
it was almost 30.
2024. Yeah, let's not even talk about that. But in 1995, two movies came out: Hackers and The Net.
Yes.
So let's just discuss those two movies because The Net really doesn't have the notoriety in the cybersecurity world as Hackers does. So I'll let you pick which one to start with, but they're very different movies.
I don't know, like the young boy in me who used to sit and beat on his Macintosh keyboard really wants to talk about Hackers.
Let's start with Hackers.
It
Highly
was a great movie.
stylized. Yeah, okay. Yep. Johnny Lee Miller, Angelina Jolie. They
It's a
got
great movie.
married, by the way. I think they were married from that movie.
Really?
Yeah, I think he was her first husband. But anyway, that's off track. Very unrealistic portrayal of hacking, exaggerated visuals of cyberspace, and oversimplified complexities of everything. But it stuck around. So what do you think gives it its staying power?
I don't know. Maybe it was the year. Maybe I don't know, but I firmly believe the hackers and the over exaggeration of that set us on the trajectory over the next couple years where you saw. I also feel like when you start to think about it, it started the trend of incorporating technology into large movies,
Yeah, because it was
right?
starting to become more mainstream, like the day to day, people were using it. I think, oh my God, in 1995,
I was 6.
I was in fifth grade. So we were starting to go to computer class and the Oregon Trail. So it
Oh,
was
I
become
love Oregon Trail.
yeah, I'm pretty sure that was in like 1995, 1996 time. So like it
We'll go
was,
with it.
yeah, it was becoming more mainstream and like the Mavis beacon teaches typing. I did that at some
Yeah,
point as well. So that's when, okay, so we'll say it was like to your point, the year, it was a pivotal year. There was starting to be the shift of more computers in homes, more
right.
availability. And it was hyped up in that because of that movie. I'll agree
Well,
with you there.
yeah, I won't say that 1995 started like the digital transformation era, but I do think that things started to be taken more seriously
Hmm.
in 1995 because I even remember in 95 and 96 because I've been on computers since I was knee high to a grasshopper, as my grandmother would say. Have no idea what it means.
That's a new one to me. Okay.
Oh, that's not one that's up in the Northeast. That's a
No.
southern thing. Yeah, knee high to a grasshopper. So I was on computers from a very young age, 5, 6. But I around that time, like you even started to hear like computers are taking over, they're gonna start taking jobs. And then as you got closer to the end of 96 and 97, you started talking about Y2K. Oh,
Yeah. Oh,
the
yeah,
computers
yeah.
are gonna die on
I remember
during
that hype.
Y2K.
Yep, okay. That's
But for me, 95, 96, 97, 98, like very young years where technology started to bloom. You started to get the Game Boy Advances, the Sega Genesis, where we're going from 8-bit characters and 16-bit characters to 2D modeling to 3D modeling.
mhm,
All of that really, if you think back to one movie where graphics and digitalization and technological transformation, it's like everything goes back to like hackers,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, and that's I think that's a very fair thing to say, and it still holds up today when it comes to the action and, like, the sequences in the movie, like, when they're getting down to the actual hacking bits. And then the Net in 1995 starred Sandra Bullock, and long story short, like, stumbles her character stumbles across some government secrets, and then she effortlessly, all by herself, alters her entire identity and manipulates the government databases for who she is and corporate databases without any significant hurdles whatsoever. So the speed and the ease are highly exaggerated, in particular on the government side. Even for 1995, come on, like that was ridiculous. Corporate, I could see there being holes back in the 90s in the corporate environment because corporate security wasn't really a thing. It was
Yeah,
known, but it was not what it is today. And there weren't all these massive firewalls and IDS and IPS and honeypots that were put out to distract people and capture them, and audit logging and monitoring and things of that nature on the corporate side. The
yeah.
government side had their own controls and processes in place decades before. So I feel like that one kind of misses the mark a bit.
It does, but for me, it also speaks to fluctuation, the oversight in systems at that time.
Mhm.
Another reference for me, like on the financial side, if you really think about it, I think it was a Disney movie, but Blank Check. Do you remember that movie? Kid gets his bike ran over by this
Oh,
super rich guy.
that was Blank Check? I could have I yes, I remember that
Yeah.
story. Yes, okay.
But so this kid cashes $1 million check, and it like to your point, right? Like you start thinking about like regulatory processes, checks and balances, audit logging, right? Why is this 10-year-old kid cashing $1 million check and like for his $100 bike or whatever it was? So to your point, like we would assume that government compliance, security policies, things like that existed,
Mhm.
and it would have trickled down to corporate entities, financial systems, things like that. But
Yeah.
while these can be inaccurate depictions, they do speak to the larger problem set of sometimes sharing information is not done as rapidly as it should be, and it
Yeah.
does lead to unintended access or to manipulation of databases and the
Yeah.
altering of identity. I remember being in high school, like the big joke was, who's going to hack the principal and change the grades? It happened,
Oh,
right? Like,
really? Oh,
oh, it
okay.
definitely happened. It was
Funny.
not me, mainly because I didn't care enough. I was already going to the Marine Corps. I was like,
Mhm.
pass me or fail me, I don't care. I leave in however many days.
That's funny.
But Yeah,
So is
I
that
mean,
was
like,
I'm sorry, I have to ask, was that like a senior prank? Or was that because like our like senior pranks, like we didn't do anything that malicious. And then the other day I watched a senior prank where a high school, I don't know where, but they hired a bagpiper to follow their principal around for the day. And I think that's brilliant. That is a non-criminal senior prank. If yours was your senior prank doing that, then we're
I don't
very
know if it
different
was
places.
yeah, I don't know if it was senior prank or what, but yeah, I just remember it.
Yeah,
I think my favorite senior prank though, there used to be, I think the show was on MTV, but I saw it and they released 4 chickens into the high school
that's
and they
funny.
numbered them 1, 2, 4, and 5.
Oh, that's great.
So everyone was apparently running around the school looking for chicken number 3 and couldn't find them. That again, that's a social engineering attack.
Yeah.
If you want to bring it back to security, you put out a deceptive system knowing that people are going to count the numbers on the chickens
Yeah.
and you socially engineered them into wasting the school day looking for chicken number 3 that
That's
didn't
brilliant. I love
exist.
that. That's so funny. And then in our last few minutes here, let's talk a little bit about some books. Now, you are far more versed on this than I am. I will admit the things I read are like Harvard Business Review and MIT books. I am not, I don't have the attention span, I think, to get through some of these books. So, one of the books you mentioned to me, and it is on my list to read, is Digital Fortress. Can you talk a little bit about that one?
Yeah, so Digital Fortress, one of my all-time favorite books. It's by Dan Brown. Everyone knows Dan Brown because of
Da Vinci
Signs and
Code.
Symbols, Da
Yeah.
Vinci Code. I've got to look up Inferno. It's actually at the very top of my shelves here is actually like my Dan Brown collection. Digital Fortress, Deception Point, Angels and Demons, Lost Symbol, Inferno, Da Vinci
Yeah.
Code, like all of those. Digital Fortress is a wonderful book. It has heavy play into encryption and surveillance, and then as you like start to evolve within the story, there you start to question the efficacy of privacy and security, right?
Oh.
And it's something I feel like you and I have talked about in the past, um, probably around AI models and
Mm,
other things, right?
yeah.
But the idea of an NSA owned system having the ability to decrypt messages, encrypt messages, surveil remote systems, remote people. It really just it plays into that, and it's a wonderful story of like understanding at what point is too much oversight and a breach of privacy compared to what's the appropriate level of security.
Mm.
All time book, love it.
Okay, all right, I'll read it. It is on my
Read it.
list. If there's like an Audible book, I'll look for that.
Oh, there's definitely got to be Audible. I
Okay.
don't know that I would do. I've thought about reading
When I
Audible.
drive into the office, that's really when I listen to stuff.
I
So,
I've really thought about reading, and then I hear my voice, and I'm like, "Eh, maybe not."
yeah,
But
same.
then I get close to the mic, and I think, "Maybe I could do this."
Maybe.
Yeah, a little
Fallback
creepy.
career. Um, so what about, the book, The Three Body Problem, which has been turned into a show? Again, haven't watched it. So if you've read the book, if you've watched the show, like, what are your thoughts there on that one?
So, I read this book in a cybersecurity club, in a cybersecurity book club, and the 3 body problem, while there are, like, strategic cybersecurity principles that, like, you could call, the idea of technology and virtual reality
Mhm.
and the philosophy in which like that integrates into human society and the way that you are solving problems or you are predicting future problems, like the philosophical themes there are very strong and you're able to directly correlate those themes back to the use of technology and virtual reality for understanding past problems, present problems, and future problems. But also, as you start to think about that, like the way that those data points could be collected and used for both good and bad. I don't want to draw too much just because of like the amount of attention that the three body problem is garnering right now. I don't want to ruin the
That's
story for anyone or
fair.
that, but that is, I've only watched one episode, but I've read the book 3 different times now. It's actually a series. I need to finish the series, but I
Yeah.
keep going back to that book and another book called Cryptonomicon. Cryptonomicon is a book about historical cryptography and modern cybersecurity. And so, like, the blending of that and the way that I think about growing my teams, I bring all this back to like the way that I want to grow my career, the way that I want to evolutionize and revolution like training and implementation of cybersecurity practices and policies. Like
Mhm.
those two books are very good reference points for me in understanding like philosophical impacts, ethical impacts, the blending of past learnings against current technologies, and
Yeah.
the way that I want to be able to have predictors of success in the future.
Yeah, and for me, when I think about the books that I've read, which are not like the fictional books, the level of technical detail varies widely, which I'm assuming is going to be the same for the fictional books. It really depends on it. Some authors delve really deeply into technical aspects of cybersecurity, while others just graze the surface and go with what they know. Where in reality, like the technical accuracy in books, like for the books that I read at least, they can be high, but like the dramatic side, the elements aren't often as exaggerated as they are in some of the books.
Yeah.
Very much like media with TV and movies. Books, I think, do a better job of focusing on motivations and backgrounds, offering the psychological insights. Of course, yes, some shows do it as well, more for their main characters, like the Penelope Garcias of the world and like Criminal Minds, where you know her background versus maybe the criminal that's in that one episode where you don't go into those things. Where, to your point earlier that you made, real world cybersecurity involves OSINT. It involves understanding the psychology of what you're trying to do, social engineering, and understanding a company and the backgrounds uh, of the architecture. So it's very different in that aspect. And I feel like the real world practices of like teamwork and collaboration, continuous monitoring, prevention, laws and regulations, incident response and recovery, like that stuff does not get really covered at all in books or media, where I think that's a really big piece of cybersecurity practicing, if that's even a
It,
word, that's missing. We're not
yeah.
talking about those practitioners that are doing those things, that are on the offensive from a defensive position. And that, I think, is it's a little unfortunate that you don't really get to see it.
The other thing that, I mean, to your point, the other thing that I think that needs to be more widely shown, and it's implied really a lot in like shows and movies, but it's not discussed, is getting things wrong
Yeah, that's a really good point.
and the impact of getting it wrong.
Yeah, well, that's one of the things that we've talked about a lot. I was a panelist a few weeks ago at RSA on a couple panels, and I also was an earned speaker session talking about cybersecurity burnout. And there is no real mechanism for awarding or rewarding people for getting it right in our field. We weren't hacked today or this month or this quarter, or we didn't have an incident because of whatever. But the one time that
Yeah.
something is done wrong, it could be game changer. It could be
Profit.
an extinction event. So I think that's a really good point that they don't cover enough of that flip side of what that, and then the burnout and the
Yeah.
toll that it takes on you from that's actually an extremely good point. And I can't believe that I didn't make it like earlier, that it didn't come to my head. So thank you for that, because I think that's really important to emphasize and highlight. So I think my synopsis from this conversation is that like understanding the differences between what you're seeing in books, TV, movies, maybe even online on some of the social media platforms can help you set your expectations if you're thinking about moving into the cybersecurity career, or if you're already here and you're wondering what's happening on the other side, like of my team or my peers. And it does highlight some of the importance of doing your homework and having a comprehensive and collaborative approach to what's actually happening in the real world. Fiction and media are just that. They're
Yeah.
not, and that goes across for everything. There's nothing out there on TV that's a 100% accurate depiction of what's going on. Even the news can get it wrong, right? If
Yes.
you only see a portion of a clip of something on the news, it doesn't actually represent what's happening in real time. So you just have to remember that. And movies and TV shows and books are entertainment.
They are. They 100% they are entertainment, not and what I'll say is I know that we're getting towards the end is not everyone is Superman and not everyone is super hacker man either.
Yeah,
So also whenever you talk about getting people into the industry, it's finding the right mentor as well to temper expectations and
yeah,
execution. That way there is someone there to talk to you about failure, about getting it right because I was super hesitant in the past, but I believe like all of your mentorship should come from your direct line leadership and within your company. I think that breeds siloed thought processing
yeah.
and it it de-intimates or I don't know if de-intimates is the right word, but it creates a lack of intimacy and the ability to have diversity of thought, right?
Absolutely. Yep. My
I've
mentor
learned
is not in my company.
yeah, I'm still on the search for a mentor, but I'm also in this very weird spot of my career of now I need to define am I going to stay in the leadership path? Am I going to stay in the technical leadership path?
Mhm.
Am I going
Yep.
to go a completely different route? So that's where I'm at right now. So but I do have like career mentors and people I look up to like you and Adriana who's been a guest on here and Jill and several other people
Jill
were
was a
talking.
guest too. Jill did our ESG episode. That's right.
Yes, she was, and there are other people out there for sure, but those people if you talk to all of those people that we've mentioned, they have a grounding and a realization that there is burnout, that there is inflated expectations or ulterior motives at times to get things
Yep.
right or get things wrong. So, yeah, use media for what media is for, and like you said, that's entertainment. But there are good lessons learned in everything that you read and everything that you see. But just managing that appropriately is probably my hot take for the day.
Absolutely agree with you on that one. I'm always a proponent of mentorship, so you'll never hear me say otherwise. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening today, and we will be back with a new episode soon. Thank you.
Thank you.